So I'll go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Greenfield Community Preservation Committee, 5:32 p.m. January 10th, 2024. We'll do a roll call for attendance here. Susan here. Tom is not here. Wisty is not here. Donna
Here.
here. Garth here.
Here.
Just keep it correct, Susan. David
Here.
and Amy here. So definitely have a quorum. Okay. So the first thing on our agenda, as usual, is public comment period. So
Do minutes first. Minutes.
We actually have that after.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Good enough.
The way
Fine with me.
that's the way it is on the agenda.
Okay, cool.
So if there's anyone in person or on Zoom who wants to do a 3-minute public comment, I'll just look in the room, see if there's anyone here. Anyone on Zoom who would like to do a public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we will move on then to approval of minutes from November 30th, 2023. It's been a while since I last.
I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
Second.
Any other discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none. I'm going to do roll call votes just because we're remote and in person at the same time. So, so for the approval of the minutes, Susan,
Yes.
Garth,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
All right, now I'm also a yes. So those minutes are approved. Okay, so our new business, we are proceeding with application review. We started at our last meeting with one, and now we have 3 for this meeting. And just a reminder, basically the way we decided on for last year and we're continuing this year is the committee is going to look through the materials before the meeting and then come to the meeting and we can discuss. And if the applicant is here and we have questions for them, we'll ask the applicant, or we can send questions and have them respond to us later. So yeah, we can just hop into this, and maybe Christian can share some of the materials on the screen while we're discussing. So the first application on the agenda is City Clerk's Office, binding and rebinding of the city's historical documents. And I guess we could look back at the application again, and just a reminder, this one, the total project cost is estimated $200,000 and they're requesting $75,000. Yeah, that's actually looking at it. Basically binding, rebinding, broadening documents, each category representing a unique facet of the community's history, as you see there. Yeah, does anyone have anything you want to start with this? Any discussion to start with?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Quinn, are you the person who's on this?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. One of the things I was wondering about is that you don't seem, and maybe I'm missing it somehow. I don't see a kind of line by line budget for this. And I was wondering if there is one. I understand it would be materials and cost of personnel, et cetera, but have you got an idea of what the $75,000 would pay for specifically?
99% of that 75,000 would go to the books, just either rebinding them. We're not looking for money per se for, employee costs. We're literally just wanting to preserve the books as required by the state.
Okay.
And I guess just following on that. So would the process be that the books would get sent out to someone who would do that? Is that how that works?
That is correct. Right now, I have a couple calls, emails out, looking at different book binderies. The main one that most city and town clerks use is out towards the Boston area, and one of us, either myself or Kathy, would actually drive the books out because we do not trust them to go out with anybody else because they're so important.
Garth has his hand up.
Yeah, I guess my question was just, so this is just for rebinding, not for digitizing.
No, it is
correct?
not for, that is correct. We're not digitizing at this time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Quinn, I know you want, this project is much bigger than what you're requesting from us, but if you got less than the 75,000, would that just mean it would be a longer period of time and and you would just do whatever you can with the money you have? Or would you be looking for other funds as well?
Well, right now, we would be very grateful for whatever you may offer to us. I am personally looking for other grants, trying to figure out how to be able to afford this. There's so many years worth of documents, it's probably even more than what we estimated.
Thank you.
Like, do you know approximately like how many years are we looking at that we have in these
So-
these sort of files?
If we're looking at just the vital records, officially it dates back to 1846. But offhand, I know personally from digging through the old records that we have vital records dating back to the 1700s. They're in, closed binders, but they're not preserved.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Donna, you got your hand up?
So my question is about access. I would like to know how this project will increase the public's access to these documents. Yeah, as opposed to the way they are now.
Okay, right now, there really is no public access for any of our documents. So we'll use vital records again, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. We cannot allow anybody to look in the documents within 100 years from today, because that person could still be alive. In some of our records, whether it's an adoption or a single parent, they're called impounded records, which means that the only people who have access and are allowed to see it are people either listed on the document itself or the clerk's office. Unfortunately, the state forbids us to share that sort of thing. That's part of the reason why we don't have anything digitized.
And going back to the 1700s or whatever, what would happen with those documents? Would they become more available to, researchers, to the community?
Yes, absolutely. We've only had one researcher in the last year come out and look through the records. We have special gloves you have to wear, very particular, because they're not sealed. They're just literally documents that are crumbling. But we definitely would love to give some more access. Unfortunately, we don't quite have the facility that the new library has. And I am sure there may be some documents in the city clerk's office that could end up being found and saved and sent over to the library for more public access, but that would be the city clerk's decision, not mine.
So one thing I wanted to clarify, this goes for all of the projects tonight, since these are all historical projects, is that just to remind everyone, all historical projects either have to be a building on the state historic registry, or the Greenfield Historical Commission has to vote that the thing being preserved is of historical value. And it says on your application that that did happen at the November 2023 meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I requested a copy of the minutes for that and they hadn't been able to get them to me yet.
Okay.
Because there's some pretty specific language that you're supposed to use, otherwise it doesn't technically count. But they should have been aware of that, so I'm hoping they did it correctly, and so you should be all set.
Wonderful, thank you.
Right. Yes.
Nope, not for me.
Any other committee members have any questions or comments?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks for I guess that's all we've got for tonight. Thanks for being here and answering our questions.
Thank you all so very much. We really appreciate working with you all, and please feel free if you'd like to email any other questions, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, great.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Okay. So next we've got Franklin Community Co-op, Greenfields Market expansion into former Wilson's building. And again, we can here. I'm sure we'll have some questions. Also, if any, I know there were people who were recused from this one. If anyone's recused from this one, if you're remote, turn off your video and microphone. And if you are in person, you should be leaving the room for this.
Now, let me just ask, if we're members of the co-op, do we need to be recused or not?
I don't think,
If you're a member of the co-op,
Yeah.
Isn't it everybody?
I think
Yeah.
it was if you had like a financial,
Yeah.
like if you,
because I know the difference was Garth donated to the capital campaign and you also donated.
Yeah,
I think there is a way around that where you file a disclosure form, but since you haven't done that yet,
Okay.
it's safer to recuse
okay,
yourself.
yeah, I'll recuse them.
I would just add that I'm also a member of the co-op.
as am I,
Yeah,
but
It's a serious problem.
I think that's okay, because it's not the same as you're not receiving or having a financial stake in the project in the same way as someone who contributed to the capital campaign.
okay.
I think after tonight's meeting, before we do the actual votes on all of this, it'd probably be good for all of you to file a public disclosure, which is like a 2-page form. But for tonight, I'm pretty sure that's okay to continue.
You're asking
Okay.
for a disclosure that we're members of the co-op.
Essentially, yeah. Just stating,
Can you
I don't
send me
believe
the
this will affect.
form?
Yeah, I'll send the form out after this meeting.
yeah, I guess just send it to everyone, just in case.
Yeah, the form is basically just saying, hey, I want to let you know I'm a member of the co-op. I don't believe this will affect my judgment in making decisions around this project. I'm not receiving any financial benefit from it.
Yeah. Okay, so this project, total project cost 22 million, CPA funds request $200,000. And essentially, this project is, the funding here is for the restoration of the historical facade and maintaining and restoring the interior tin ceiling. Terrazzo tile and cast iron columns are aspects of this planning. There's a lot we could go through here. Donna, go ahead.
I'll just start by saying I was really confused by this application because I could not tell specifically what they were asking for from CPC and how much exactly that cost. Like I couldn't, and I looked at it, maybe I didn't look clearly or deeply enough, but I was looking for some sort of concrete thing like this part of the project that we're going to use CPC money for will be to, fix this part and this is how much this part costs. So I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what CPC is doing here other than sort of throwing some money in toward the whole project. So hopefully we can get some clarification on that.
And I think the applicant, if you, you come up here, just so the microphone, maybe sit up here, just so the microphone will pick up your voice better. No problem. Just go down to the table, this table. Oh, yeah.
So on the application itself, as it's written, we filled it out as written, total project cost.
Mhm.
The total project isn't just revitalizing the facade. And it's not just the terrazzo or the historic elements of it. So there could be a revision that might make that more clear. I will note that, and we could specifically submit it just off of the costs related to those elements. But the cost of the terrazzo tile and the cast iron columns in the tin ceiling alone, you were already in the $500,000 range. What we're looking for in the facade right now, we have it spec'd at 400,000, but we just started our core pricing rounds of estimates. So initial specs, the amount that we have available to request from the grant won't cover the full entire cost. So we're not necessarily looking for just throwing money at the total project because we have other sources and other grants and other ways that we're looking towards trying to gain the funding for this, which is also historic tax credits and working with the community builders, the housing project as well, because they also they'll be doing 80% of the facade work for theirs because it's two separate projects. So overall, the total project itself is $22 million, and we have a variable sources of funding, and there is a gap as well. So what we're looking to do is find out what sources and what opportunities do we have to, one, take city support and use that city support as leverage so we can seek other options for financial support from the state and in federal as well. And then two, how do we build and what sources are available to us where we're a cooperative, we're not a nonprofit, but we sure do spend our money like one. So we're seeking many different grants and so we can just build the base to fund each particular section, whether it's historical or whether it's like our Food for All program. So it is segmented.
So I guess just a follow-up question then. So the 200,000, would that essentially be for materials for the historical restoration part? Because you'd have to send us
Yep.
receipts, and I'm wondering what the receipts are going to be for.
Well, in a lot of cases, they would be for the work done to revitalize it. So for example, we have to encapsulate the tin ceiling, which is chock full of lead paint. That work alone is substantial. And same with the columns themselves, the terrazzo tile, the work that we'll be doing, we'll be grinding them down to bring them back to their original, well, as close to the original presentation as possible. And the facade itself, that's a variety of repointing. And well, there's quite a bit from materials themselves to just the actual work to be done. And we could segment this into a couple different areas, and I think it's really kind of more the guidance on the committee of understanding what's more beneficial, whether we focus on the facade or the tile or the terrazzo components of it. And I also asked our architect to come if there's any particular questions about what we're actually looking to do to revitalize it.
Yeah, because they did just an FYI for everyone, they did send over some architectural specs, which I just got them today, so those are new to all of the committee.
And those are just layout wise, but they can cover the scope of what we're really looking at. And you can scroll down more, which will cover the cafe, the community room where the tile's located. As you continue to scroll, And I don't believe I have all the pictures put into this as well, but those can also be upgraded and added in.
I think Donna had your hand up first.
Yeah, same sort of question or follow-up on my previous comments. It would be really like if you have like a distinct portion of the project that, you know, if it's the encapsulation of the lead paint, which you said is a significant cost, and it's actually more than what you're asking for us, it would be a lot more clear to me if you said, this is what we're asking for. It's not gonna cover all of it, but it's gonna cover part of it. And so, you know, the encapsulation of the lead or the restoration of something is gonna cost $300,000. We're gonna get the other 100. We're asking you for 2, something like that. I think it would make it easier for us
Sure.
to just sort of look at and understand.
No problem. We can remove the noise from that.
David?
Thanks. I think you might consider, I don't know, maybe other people from this group can weigh in, but you may want to consider focusing things on the facade, since that is something that's part of like the streetscape, the sort of historical character of the town, something that is publicly accessible, whether or not people choose to go into the building or not. You know, it's a kind of like an unavoidable public impact what the facade will be. And so that's just, I don't know, maybe that's a good suggestion. Other people could maybe weigh in if that makes sense. But I also think it would be helpful for this group if you could characterize like the attention to historical preservation issues that have been in your project, like planning and architectural planning to date, you know, because I know that's a lot of, if you're going for historical tax credits, you know, that has a very kind of high bar for attention to very careful historical restoration and preservation issues. So I just think this group might benefit from knowing the amount of sort of historical work and attention that's gone into the project to this date. So thanks.
And would you like us to reflect on some of that work now, or just follow up and maybe like someone look at maybe some revisions that might be more helpful and zeroing in, taking your suggestions, zeroing necessarily on the facade? But with Scott present from TDA, our architect group, who's pretty much spearheading the historic component, and Tom Douglas Architects is the group that we're utilizing with Epsilon Associates. We can cover that now, or for the sake of everyone's time, would you like us to follow up with that?
I guess if it's brief, you know, maybe briefly right now and then
Sure.
maybe follow up in more detail.
Scott, do you feel you might have some brief insights?
Come up there.
Come on.
Yeah, there's another seat over here too, if you want.
So I was gonna say one thing, and last year we had a couple of applications that kind of got tweaked as the process went on, and so basically you just resubmit the same application form with the new focus. Yeah.
So if we're limiting the focus, we've got so many things that we're going to be spending money on with this building. We have so many things to choose from, but if we're focusing just on the storefront, there's a lot of moving parts there. As David mentioned, we are going to be going for National Historic Tax credits, which means that we're going to be following the National Park Service regulations or guidelines for how to do a restoration to an historic building. We've been working on this building for a long time. We are very invested in seeing it be returned to something of its former glory. And to that end, while we're limited only to the first floor, anything above the first floor will be in the community builders corner. We're just working on that storefront as you see it there, not the second floor, but the ground floor. And so what we're going to be doing is taking off the aluminum storefront. Eventually TCB will be taking off the aluminum screen on the upper floors. But there's really nothing historic left at the storefront, and we're going to need to recreate what's there. I had included a couple pictures, historic pictures, just to give a sense of what had been there. If you go up one more, that picture of the old Hotel Devons shows it around 1920 or so. And you can see that that whole storefront holds together. You can see that that it's mostly black. The white lighter colors that you can see inside the department store are curtains or something like that. The windows are very tall, far taller than they are today. There's kind of a clear story windows or a second tier of windows above the plate glass windows. So it let in a lot of light and a lot of exposure. It was really open to the street. It very much engaged people on the street. And I agree that going forward is going to be it's going to be the thing that people see the most when they're walking down the street. That is very tactile. They'll be walking in and out. They'll be touching it. It's right there. So we're going to work very hard to make sure that it replicates something similar to that. That is for the National Park guidelines, that is our kind of our target era, 1920. The parts of it, there's going to be rebuilding the base, having about a 14-inch or 16-inch base with a dark stone to match what's there. It'll be durable. I'm not sure that's actually stone. We'll have an aluminum storefront, which is the most cost effective. It'll be very dark charcoal as well. Basically, the whole storefront will be that same color. And the idea is to replicate what had been there, which we think was probably black. We're not going quite that dark, just so that it will show up a little bit better in light and not just disappear. So we're going for a dark charcoal. There will be some new stuff that we would prefer not to have, but we have to have by code, like structural diagonals that will be in the windows. And if you go to the very last page, or in the upper part of that sheet, here we're looking at the plans. The bottom plan is that base that I mentioned with the stone. The middle drawing is the plate where the storefront, the glass window and the aluminum frames and the doors are all located. And then the top picture is the actual elevation of the storefront. You can see in some of the windows there are diagonals. Those have to be there per structural, those for seismic retrofitting the building so it hopefully never falls down in a seismic event. Aside from that, we are recreating a very strong pattern of columns across the front, which used to exist and has really been lost in what's happened in the intervening years. We've got the windows above the primary windows, those clear story windows, to bring light deeper into the space. And then importantly, we have that continuous sign band, which you can see in the old pictures, but has long gone. And by doing that, it really ties the whole building together. And all of those elements are equally important parts that we're going to have to bring together. And each one of them is going to cost quite a bit. The aluminum storefront alone is probably going to be in excess of $200,000. And then you bring in the other parts, it'll be far, far above.
So in the nature of the application that we submitted, we kind of submitted it overall is that we're preserving this historic landmark in town. We're utilizing a now vacant building and then bringing it all the way down into the fact that partnering with TCB, that we are going to pull off the facade. And although the majority of historic tax credits will be lent to the majority of the building itself, we're going to take on the effort to make sure that we restore one way or the other to fit this 1920s facade, to make sure that we're actually following through with the commitments that we made to the owner and the legacy of the building itself. And it's a very high bar that we have to work through with the historic tax credits and the commission as well. We're well aware of that.
It sounds like you're probably already doing this already, I think is what you were saying. There's the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. It sounds like that's what you're already doing. We've asked other applicants doing historic building rehabilitation just to send us, there's like a list of 10 of those standards, and just send us like, a brief explanation on how you're meeting all those standards. So if that could be a good follow-up,
for sure.
we can make sure that that's like the number one priority that we have to make sure happens.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing that we mentioned at our last meeting for that project was asking about whether there was gonna be any historical preservation restriction, or if you'd be open to a historical preservation restriction on parts of the project that are being restored or rehabilitated with the CPA funding to maintain that, historical character in perpetuity.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of any particular restrictions, but some of the things that we're doing, and it's not even just related to the facade, but we're actually redoing we have to do a revised HVAC system in order to keep the historic nature of the store itself on the interior, because we're not going to touch the tin ceiling. In order to hit some of the standards that will be required for new market tax credits, we can't hang anything off the ceiling itself for HVAC or air supply. So we're actually circumventing through the basement and doing this really bizarre layout. So that's the only one I'm aware of as a restriction that we might have.
Yeah. I guess I was, there can be like a legal restriction applied to the property so that any work done in the future would still have to meet those Secretary of Interior standards. Just so that
Sure.
you're not getting CPA funds and then
Correct.
a year later turning it into a modern looking building.
I think that's already assumed
Okay.
in the work that we're doing and the
Yeah.
investment we're making,
Mhm.
being the size store we are and the size of the investment we're making, that's already an assumption.
Okay.
So that's the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay, and I guess I'll just clarify for the committee members and the public and everybody that historic preservation restrictions are not required by law unless property is being acquired with the historical CPA funding. But many committees do require historic preservation restrictions when funds are used for historical rehabilitation projects. So just wanted to get that all out there. David.
So just so I'm clear, it's a preference of some CPC committees, but it's not a legal requirement.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, it might not be a preservation restriction, but for the most part, there needs to be at least some form of agreement around the maintaining and continuing to follow the standards. And the reason for that is actually the Massachusetts anti-aid amendment. Basically, the public needs some kind of guarantee that this property is going to be continuing to receive investment in it, because otherwise it's basically just giving money to a business without receiving public benefit in return. I think the agreement would be the public benefit.
David again.
I think because of the complexity, it would be good to tell the applicant like an agreement between whom and whom would be
Yeah, it'd be between the
information
city
for
of
them to
Greenfield
know.
and yes, between the city of Greenfield and the property owner. We recently did preservation restriction already with the Franklin County Fairgrounds. They rehabilitated their cattle barns with CPC funding, and so it hasn't been executed yet, but we're making our way through the process for that. So we've already done that for one project.
And that was the only historical building rehabilitation last year. So far, 100% of the ones we funded, 1 out of 1 has gotten it. David again.
Again, just to clarify, so they were given the funding without the agreement in place, but the agreement was something that's being worked on and has not yet been completed.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, the funding can get put in place and the project can take place as long as at some point when the restriction is executed. Basically, the way it would work is if for some reason that didn't work out or they decided to back out, they'd have to return the funding.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments from the committee members here? All right,
Well, sweet.
so
Thank you for your
sounds like
time.
you got some
and
homework.
I have some, another go-do list.
Thank you.
Thanks,
for
guys.
being here. Right, so we have one more project to review tonight. which is 278 to 302 Main Street LLC, Timothy Grader, 278 Main Street restoration and repainting of historic cornice. Down. So again, total project cost here 48,500. Severe funds requested 20,000. Hold up yet on my. And this one, if you go down to the, oh yeah, cornice restoration, paint restoration. You go down to the table with the,
Page 4, or with the price.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And page 4 is the breakdown.
Yep.
There you go. Oh, yeah. So that's total funding. I guess one question I have quickly on here is, it does have total, what the total amounts are gonna be. But it doesn't say, which ones the CPA funding would be for. So I guess that would just be one clarifying.
Okay, I wasn't trying to break that down because I looked at
Yeah.
the total project cost and a partial funding.
Okay.
You can work on breaking up in.
And it's done.
My question, did you just call on me? I'm sorry,
Yeah, I did.
okay, great. My question is, do you have actual quotes that you could share with the committee?
Yep.
Okay, because I
Yeah,
sort
actually-
of like scrolled through, but I didn't see them in the application.
I don't think I included them, but I can
Okay,
keep those, yeah.
thank you.
I'll include the low bid,
Mhm.
which is what this is based.
And do you want to share the photos?
Yeah,
Just
that's exactly what we're talking.
people know what we're talking about here. So yeah, the restoration of it. I remember when the application first came in for the pre-app, we had to clarify what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just sort of the building facade.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the more visible features in downtown as you're coming up Main Street.
Yeah, I guess maybe if you could just kind of explain a little more like the process of what it's going to be to do the restoration of
Well,
that.
clearly it's a very difficult location to get. Most of the facade is in very good shape. There's a few minor little repairs. And mostly involves scraping and painting. And so the majority of the funds are going for lifts and scaffolding so that we can get people up there safely to work on that.
Yes.
I know you said that that if you don't get the full funding, you would then, arrange other things to do that. What does that mean in terms for you? Like, is there a point where this just doesn't get done if you don't get funding?
Maybe not this year. So we're doing a bunch of other capital things in this building. This is not. We started 3 years ago trying to do an elevator modernization. So first of all, we have embarked on a number of historic restoration projects at this building, including the facade restoration where the opening of Rise Above Bakery has gone. We've got architectural plans to do another facade restoration. We have restored the lobby, which includes restoring the tin ceiling and bringing back tile work that was originally there, including some decorative bordering and painting on the walls that we also restored. But there is an elevator there from the 1960s that's in series that makes me nervous. I don't want it to go down and not stop working, although it is very well maintained. And so we've been trying to restore that. We signed a contract to implement that modernization of the elevator 3 years ago. The vendor has been unable to start the project and been unable to provide a start date. So we have terminated the contract and we're going out to bid again. So depending on if we don't get the full funding and depending upon the cost of that major capital improvement for the budget, we may delay this a few years. But I don't know the timeline because I haven't seen how the pricing has changed on that project.
When will you know that? Because this in part We
Yeah,
can,
we have-
we can extend things out, but we need to get an idea of what we're.
When will I know
Mhm.
the effect? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you give me $5,000, it's probably gonna take me a few years to
Mhm.
pull this together.
Okay.
If it. Yeah, so it's kind of like, there's a lot of variables in this, and
Yeah.
I know you're looking for a hard answer, and it's difficult.
Not looking for a hard answer as much as looking for an idea of what the parameters are. Because in the case of something, let's say we give you $5,000 this year,
Mhm.
but it turns out that you can't do it for 2 years. We can stretch that out.
Okay.
According to what we do.
Okay.
But the question then becomes, are we stretching it out for 5 years? Are we stretching it out for 2 years? Are we stretching it out for 3 years? And it's that kind of question that,
Probably not more than 3 years.
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the initial agreement you'll have can't be longer than 3 years legally. So 3 years, that if you're completed by the end of that, that'd be actually perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess that also kind of gets to, when we get to the point where we're comparing all the projects and deciding what to fund this year. I think it's like $1.1 million requested, and
Right.
we have like $300,000.
I know,
Yeah,
that's a big request.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
And a lot of need in a lot of areas.
yeah,
So part of the question would be is if you want to, if you think you're going to be pushing this out for another year or so, then one of the things we might ask
Right.
is, can you come back next year?
I mean, if this was fully funded at the request, we would do this year.
Okay.
But
Okay,
if
that's-
it was,
that's helpful.
if you weren't unable to fully fund it this year, we could look at coming back another year.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful.
I mean, we have a maintenance budget of substantial that we can do this in a future year on that building as well.
Okay. Thanks. That's really helpful.
so I guess, I just wanted to point out that this building, we do have the document saying that this building is on the state historic registry. And we had that for the last building too, and I was gonna mention it, but
I think all of downtown is part of the state historic registry.
Yeah, basically the way it works is there's a few buildings in downtown and throughout Greenfield that are on the historic state register on their own, but there's also
Mhm.
two historic districts in downtown. They're right next to each other, so we usually think of them as one. And basically any building that's kind of listed as contributing to that historic district is automatically eligible for CPC funding,
Mhm.
including this one.
Mhm. Okay, I just wanted to point that out, just for clarification's sake. And then going back to the same two questions from the last applicant, well, actually three, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be great if you could, we can send you a list of the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Okay.
And if you could just, give a quick explanation on how
Okay.
you're meeting all those. It's basically like, maintaining the character, not changing the colors and material.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Great.
And then the other thing is the question about a historical preservation restriction and
Yeah.
whether that's something that you'd be open to
I would be,
preserve that. in the
if you'd like to know more, but in concept, it makes
Yeah.
sense, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I'd like to understand the language a little bit more in detail before I make a
Yeah.
final comment, but yeah.
Mm.
right
Yeah,
now.
and I think you've kind of worked on that more with the previous project. I don't know if there's anything you could explain briefly about like what that would entail.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that preservation restrictions can be for certain parts of property, I believe, I'm pretty sure. And I believe there's also two kind of levels of preservation restriction where there's a perpetuity one and one that's only for a set time frame. I believe the one we're doing at the fairgrounds is for perpetuity. We want those, their buildings that are gonna be there forever. For this one or for others, there could always be one that's for 15 years, 20 years, just guaranteeing you're following those standards for that length of time. And then the agreement would end, and obviously you'd hope that continue to follow them, but it wouldn't be something you'd have to monitor for the rest of the time.
But then at least we would say the public got their benefit for
Exactly.
20 years.
Right.
And that goes on the deed and follows to the next owner, is that the end?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Because we clearly know we've shown a commitment over the 7 years we've owned this
Mhm.
building to
Mhm.
restoring and preserving it, but
Yeah,
I don't know who will own it after me.
exactly.
Right.
And that's the good thing about the preservation restriction. So then, if you sold it and some big box company bought it.
And wanted to put up the old Wilson's facade on it.
Yeah, but it also do something.
Was it time? I mean, There's something about it that is still nice to see.
Yeah. What was the other question? There was one more. What did I bring up for the last one?
Preservation restrictions, Secretary of Interior.
Signature. Yeah,
Maybe that was it.
yeah, I think that may be, could be wrong.
Yep.
Well, I guess it was probably where it's located if it's on the list. You brought that up for both already,
Mm.
so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little confused, like in just when we were talking just a moment ago about what's going on with the fairgrounds. It
Mhm.
seemed like you were characterizing it as a deed restriction. I thought it was an agreement between the city and the fairgrounds.
It is, it's a preservation deed rider. There's a few different names it can be called. But it's signed by the city, signed off by the fairgrounds, signed off by the Massachusetts Historic Commission. And then actually the Historical Commission would be the one that'd be enforcing it. I believe did some emailing with John Basile about that.
Okay, so yeah, so in any of these cases, there's some sort of deed restriction that's happening.
Yeah, usually
Yeah,
there are
okay.
other alternatives that apparently can happen, but that's all I know is it says there's other alternatives communities have pursued. So I don't know what those are. Maybe something to look into though.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like this one's a little bit more straightforward to understand what's happening.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anyone? on
I
Zoom?
did have another quick one.
Go for it.
If you could you describe like your commitment to the historical preservation and restoration in this building is great. I just wanted to give you an opportunity, like if you have done things like historical tax credits or um, anything like that, or just to give you an opportunity to describe the sort of care you've taken with historical preservation with this building. If you want to elaborate any more on that, that could be helpful for this group.
So first of all, everything has been privately funded. We have not gone, well, except for there has been some storefront funds used to restore one of the storefronts and to restore one of the granite pillars. So I guess, but beyond that, everything has been privately funded. When we purchased the building 7 years ago, there were 1970s aluminum windows that were failing in a health hazard and falling on people as they stuck their arm through. We worked with the Historic Commission to get windows with the design and of the finish and of the color that they would like to see and restore. And the first year we did all the windows. You know, it's not visible from the street. The second year we had to replace all of the roofs for the tune of about $250,000 just to save the interior. The previous owner had mothballed 2 suites on the fourth floor and one on the second floor because the leaking was so bad into the building. We have every year spent we have a budget every year to do brick restoration to just keep up with the mortar and the repointing. It's a pretty big building. It's almost 50,000 square feet. Most of that has occurred in the backside of it. We have restored the lobby, as I mentioned earlier, including removing walls to bring back historic tile work, historic tin ceilings, and some historic mural or painting work, bordering work that is in the lobby. And where we can bring back features, we do. A lot of places in the building, they've been destroyed or hidden by drop ceilings. But as we tear apart spaces and do more renovations, we are careful to make sure we're doing it in a way that is respectful of the property.
Is this all, I'm just curious, is this residential on the second floor, all residential or all
No
commercial?
residential, all commercial,
All
all
commercial.
office, yeah,
Okay.
mostly office space.
Mhm.
Is there a yoga? I think, no, there's not currently a yoga studio. There's an acupuncturist on the fourth
Mhm.
floor. So there's some, and there's some medical. There is
Mhm.
some other medical space in the building. Tapestry has a reproductive health center in the building as well.
Okay.
actually part of it's in this building and moves over to the next building. They have penetrated a wall.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, that's it, Penny, so
Thank you. Appreciate your time
Thank
tonight.
you.
we'll send you a copy of those
And
standards.
I'll get back to Christian. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thanks very much. Good to
See you
see
guys
you.
next month.
All right,
Right.
so those are the projects that we had on the agenda for tonight.
Right.
So we're moving along. I think that finishes our historic projects for first run through.
Yep.
So that's good. We got one category out of the way now. All right, so in old business, we have regular updates on previous year projects.
Yeah, so I put this on the agenda and I think it should probably be a standing agenda item, except for maybe for our busiest meetings. The projects that we funded last year are actually really starting to get into motion and are having pretty regular updates. They're sending an update every 3 months, and just regular random updates as well. So I'll go through the list and just what they've been able to tell me. So for the Historical Society's document preservation project, 50% the grant funded staff hours have been fulfilled. And 49 of the, it got cut off, 100 plus boxes have been inventoried. They're creating a searchable inventory just like they stated in their application. So that one's about halfway done. The barn rehabilitation at the Agricultural Society is completed. The Museum of Our Industrial Heritage shop equipment restoration. They're planning on making the designs for the needed parts, holding meetings with blacksmiths and other individuals who will be able to create those parts for them. The clinical and support options Wells Street shelter expansion. This update was in November, so it's a little out of date. But the project's currently going out to bid for selecting a general contractor with proposals due December 14th, so that should have already happened. CSO submitted plans for temporary shelter at One Arch Place while 60 Wall Street is under construction. And I believe that had just gone before the planning board, so that's already happened as well. The project timeline has shifted compared to when they applied. Construction is now anticipated to start in spring 2024. So that's update for CSO. And then I'm due to have a kind of catch up with Christy, but I do have a few updates. Obviously, the Shattuck Park Fitness Cluster has been completed. The pickleball court expansion, I believe a designer has been selected for that project. I believe Christy's in the process of ordering the concrete equipment for the site amenities project. And then the other ones, I need to catch up with Christy on, unless Donna's here. I don't know if you have any updates. Okay, that's okay. I'm pretty sure the ADA track access has not happened yet, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the winter weather and the cold. Exactly.
There
So those are the updates.
there was something on one of the town council warrants about like moving $500 or moving $1,000 from something to
That was
complete the track.
The ADA committee had put some money in and to match what we put in. And so I think that was to move that money in so they could do it.
Yeah, that was voted on well in advance of when you guys did your vote, so you accounted for that. It had just been the official kind of moving the money to the correct account hadn't happened yet. So that's why it's on the city council agenda.
Okay.
Cool.
Right.
All right, so our next meeting is January 30th, 5:30 here at City Hall again. And also via Zoom if you would like to be attending remotely. And on that meeting, we're going to be focusing on recreation projects. We've got pickleball, bike racks, hillside park project, site amenities, and the recreation trail wayfinding. So we'll have a big old recreation meeting next meeting on the 30th.
Now, you do have a quorum. I'm I'm planning to be singing that night. If something came up, I could be here. I'd prefer not to be here and do my thing because it's only that one day this month.
Mhm.
But David's.
Yeah, David?
Oh, sorry, I have a different question, not about the scheduling, just
Sure.
whenever is a good time.
Yeah, that's good.
This is okay. With, you know how we were talking about how the historical commission has to kind of weigh in with very specific language on, I guess, all three of these historical applications for funding.
Mhm.
Like, when does that have to happen? Like, when's the due date for that to happen?
So technically the due date, it would actually not really have to happen until before the city council vote. You guys could do your votes and make it contingent on that. But the only one that it actually does really need to happen for is the bookbinding project, because that one those are clearly aren't on the state register. The other two are in the historic district.
Okay.
So they're automatically eligible through that. There's the two different ways that can be eligible.
So for the clerk thing, we just need to check that this action that the historical commission apparently already did was done correctly.
Yeah, exactly, because this
Okay.
actually happened last time with the previous round of projects. We had them vote and say, yep, they're historically significant, but then when our attorneys were looking things over, there was the minutes needed to reflect some more specific language around it.
And so maybe you and I, Christian, can follow up on that to make sure that that's all in place.
Yeah, that sounds good. They're looking for the minutes. Once I have those, I can see exactly what was voted on, and if it's not correct, I'll work with you and get the correct language to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I just asked a question. This is just a general question. Because Tom wasn't here tonight, he's not going to be here at any of these meetings.
Did you say that?
I'm looking at the chart here and I just struck me. I hadn't, because I was looking at, so I don't know if that has significance that we should deal with or not, but I just thought I'd mention it because I just suddenly looked at one. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I've given a lot of dates and there were the front half, he was able to make a few of them, but then in the back half it wasn't working.
Right.
Try and get him at one of them.
Right.
I guess,
We could reschedule us, maybe the housing one, if it's a real priority for him to be here. Potentially.
and I guess
I think I probably know more about these projects than he does, actually.
the good thing is that we are recording, so he can watch and
That's
catch up.
true. That's true. That's good.
Also, like, if anyone here isn't going to be at a meeting, you could like send, questions that you have before the meeting and I could, ask the applicant the questions.
Yeah, I intend to do that for next meeting. So, okay, cool.
So just want to point that out. So we're not totally excluding people who can't come.
Right, right.
All right, any other business, or anyone want a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is that a second, Garv?
Sure, if there was already a first.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning?
I,
All right, we are adjourned at 6:30 PM.
okay.